All right, everybody, we're back. This is the latest episode of Flight Path. It's Friday, May 2nd, 2025, 1 week after the NFL draft. I'm Andrew Duhan. Joined alongside me is my electric co-host. Some of you guys know him as Jay Ben. He's the former radio host at 92.9 The Game in Atlanta, infamous Falcons insider, professor, coach, whatever you want, he could do it. Jeff Benedict. Find him at on X at jben_flightpath, new handle. Talk your shit, but don't cry when he snaps back. You definitely don't want to mess with him too much. Packed agenda before we dive in. Just wanted to thank all of you guys for listening, subscribing. We only go as far as you guys take us, and we're really grateful for you guys to join us on the 7th episode of Flight Path. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Jeff, we're 1 week out from the NFL draft. The Falcons, for once, did really well to exceeded everybody's expectations. Took two pass rushers. They were aggressive, traded up, and for once, in the third and fourth round, we took players that weren't, that didn't shock anyone. It seems like we went for value, and we even saw that with the UDFA class. Is it fair to say that this was truly Terry Fontenot's first class where he didn't have any influence from anyone else in the organization? Like, what was so different about this draft class compared to others?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing, right? Is I feel like because this draft class was so different, right, from start to finish, and I'm even including the undrafted free agents that they went after. This, and I said this last week, y'all. I feel like this is the first time that Terry has had full control of the draft. He didn't have Rich McKay standing over him, spanking his ass, saying, no, you can't go do that, right? Like, I felt like this was the first time, and there's no doubt that Raheem Morris had some input into this, but I felt like this was the first time that Terry was truly in control of his own draft room, and I think we see the results of that. I know he wasn't the GM in New Orleans, but as an assistant GM, they were pretty good in their draft, right? I mean, we've talked about some of the guys they've gone after, especially on the defensive side of the ball there, when he was in New Orleans, and I felt like this was really kind of reminiscent of those drafts, from the personnel and not just getting if you're going to go best player available. I felt like they did that in some of these situations. I mean, you got Xavier Watts in the fourth round. Like, that dude was a second round talent. There's no way you're not going to tell me he wasn't best player available. You got Jalen Walker, who was supposed to go in the top 10 to 15, best player available, right? So it felt like this was the draft where kind of, the fans wanting him to address certain situations. He talked about he wants best player available. I felt like this was the draft where both of those collided, and the end result was spectacular. I don't give a shit what the NFL.com says or what Fox Sports says or what some idiot at ESPN says. The Falcons knocked it out of the park, and there aren't many teams in the NFL that actually had better overall drafts than the Falcons did.
I totally agreed with that too. And it's funny because everyone's talking about, Rams fleeced the Falcons, whatever. Like, they got the 2026 first overall pick, and then you see these way too early 2026 mock drafts that have the Falcons pick being in the top 5. First of all signs are pointing to us keeping Cousins. So even if Penix gets injured, this team isn't winning less than 8 games. There's just too much talent. So that pick is not sniffing the top 5, the top 10. Maybe we'll land exactly where we were last year at 15. And then it just becomes an argument. How good is James Pierce? Because a lot of people have varying opinions on him. Some people are saying he's the 5th best edge rusher in this class. Some people are pointing to his off-field issues, which we've talked about, and it's sort of like not even a conversation starter. But Jeff, one thing that I'm going to post on Twitter is a clip from Bill Belichick's podcast during the college football season. It's called The Coach, and it's very dry, but a lot of great material in there, of course, because he's a genius. And him and Michael Lombardi, Matt Patricia, they were all talking up James Pierce, talking about how dominant he is, how powerful he is. So I'm going to post that clip on on X later. But I mean, that goes to show you, everyone, Kuiper, McShay, oh, Falcons reached for a pass rusher. No, they didn't. They were going to take this guy at 15. So it is what it is
I mean,
at that point.
Even if you believe he was the 5th best edge rusher, this draft was really deep in first-round talent, right? I mean, there's a lot of people, me excluded, because I was very vocal. But people even thought Mike Green was was one of the 3 or 4 best pass rushers. And while I disagree with that you can certainly make the argument that means that this draft was really deep at that position. So if you're going to sit here and tell me that James Pierce Jr. is the 5th best, that tells me that the 4 in front of him should all be contending for Rookie of the Year then, right? Because like this draft was really deep at that position. So again, if you want to tell me he was 5th best, that's fine. Taking the 5th best guy at a position, especially where it's really deep, right? Listen, like I would almost say, like arguing that, taking, and obviously he didn't go 5th overall, but you get a guy like Josh Allen, 5th quarterback taken in a draft, right? Like you're like, okay, he was the 5th best quarterback. Well, the other 4 ahead of him are really fucking good, right? Like that's just, there's just certain arguments. Michael Penix was what the 4th quarterback taken last year. Okay, well then the other 3 must be really fucking good, right? Like I just don't understand the argument there where other than just to try to shit on the Falcons. But again, it goes back to something that you and I talked about, and you got a couple thousand views on this clip. You talked about last week about people are only down on the Falcons taking him at 26, trading back up because the Falcons didn't ask for permission, right? Like they didn't call ESPN, they didn't call Adam Schefter, they didn't call Ian, they didn't call those guys and say, hey, by the way, we're going to go do this, hurry up and break it. So everybody kind of gets it 30 seconds ahead on Twitter. And because the Falcons didn't do that, they're all up in arms and they're letting the Falcons know, hey, if you don't run shit by us, we're going to make your public perception something really terrible. Like the fact in 2026, we think you're going to get the 3rd best fucking pick. And I've seen that nonsense and it's absolute garbage because knock on wood, the only way the Falcons have a top 3 pick in 2026 is if half the team dies in a fucking plane accident, right? Like that is literally the only way this football team is a top 3 pick next year. Something drastic and dramatic and horrid has to happen. And by the way, I'm not wishing that on anybody. Horrid has to happen for this team to be that bad. And it's just not the case. We're not the Panthers, right? We're not the Browns. This is not a team that is going to be you've been 7, 7, 7, 8. You've been middle of the pack for the last 5 years. You missed the playoffs in 7 seasons, but you also haven't been in the bottom 3 of the NFL. And there's no reason at all to think that this team with one of the best offenses in the NFL addressed every need on the defensive side of the ball is now all of a sudden going to be worse than they've been in the last 8 years. Like make that bullshit make sense to me.
It's so funny. The only way that I could see it, Jeff, realistically, like drastic scenarios outside, we trade Kirk and MP9 goes down. Then, yes, we lost, but it doesn't look like that's what's going to happen. So even if we get into that catastrophic scenario of MP9 going down, we got Kirk there. And honestly, it would be the most Falcons thing in the world if Kirk leads us to the playoffs 1 year after we bench him. So hopefully, MP9 stays healthy and everything. We obviously don't want that to happen. But that to me, and one thing that everybody should be happy about though, is when the mainstream rips you. That's generally a good thing because you don't want the public to be high on you. Last year, everybody was like, oh, Falcons got Kirk Cousins. They are a lock for the NFC South. And what happened? We were far from it. Everyone was betting us. Now, we're in a perfect scenario. Everyone's betting against us, and we're going to surprise people. So that is what you guys want. We have them exactly where we want them. And another thing to also follow along too, some of these insiders, they're chalk. They're always going to follow predictions that follow the public. They're gonna kind of rinse, repeat. These are the same people thinking that the Chiefs were gonna dismantle the Eagles in the Super Bowl, not giving the Eagles a chance or recognizing how great that offensive line is because they've never really done that before, right? Those same people are now betting against the Falcons, which is good. One person that's actually been speaking about us positively almost at every single corner. Jeff, this is going to surprise you. Mike Florio. I'll dive into his comments a little bit more, but this guy is basically contrarian. Anything that the public thinks, he goes opposite to drive view. So do I think that like he's actually high on the Falcons? I'm not sure, but he always provides the other perspective. He went as far today on his podcast to say that, oh, Falcons might actually get something of value from Kirk. They're doing something very smart, because what people don't realize, what mainstream doesn't realize is, and he's right, I actually do agree with him with this, during training camp, there could be an injury. And if there's an injury to a team like San Francisco, Brock Purdy going down, or Rams, them losing Matt Stafford, what if the Vikings, JJ McCarthy's just not ready to go and they missed out on Aaron Rodgers because he's in Pittsburgh? Now all of those teams are calling us and we're in the driver's seat of those negotiations. So that's kind of that contrarian thinking that he does, but I actually do think that's possible. Jeff, anything to share on that?
And I've said that for the last 3 weeks on this podcast, though. Like that exact situation, I said it 2 weeks ago on this podcast. This is a situation that I can see going into the season and them getting a call when somebody goes down and gets hurt, right? Like that to me is not shocking. That again, I've said all along that if you're going to deal for Kirk Cousins, you're going to play by the Falcons rules, and the Falcons are more than willing to keep him. I said, I think it was episode 4 or 5. I said the phone calls will light up when somebody gets hurt. And at that point, you are desperate to make something happen. And at that point, you're playing right into the Falcons' hands. So I've said for a month now that this is a long game, and the Falcons they're just not in a rush, because ultimately his numbers on the books, that's not going to change, right? Yes, there's a lot of post June 1st things that could happen, and but ultimately, if you're not going to give the Falcons one of two scenarios that they want, which I've talked about repeatedly on this podcast, they're just simply going to keep him and keep moving forward. And yeah, when your quarterback gets hurt, you're either going to call the Falcons or you're going to call the Giants, because they've got 19 different quarterbacks on their roster as well, right? So one of those two things is going to happen. If you are the 49ers, or you are, insert whatever other, playoff caliber team is in it, you would much rather have Kirk Cousins than Jameis Winston anyway. And so, yeah, you're going to call the Falcons and you're going to give up something in order to get him. And, the Falcons have zero desire to force something to happen, because it puts them in a really good situation. They have a really good team. Again, this offense is going to be explosive. They're really good. And you give everybody now another year under second-year coordinator. You give everybody a second year together. You've got wide receivers now that are going to actually take throws from 9, which didn't happen last year. And so, like, there's a lot that is going to go right this year. People asked me yesterday, I did, not necessarily a question and answer, but I was killing some time on the flight to New York. And somebody said, how do you feel about this year? I'm fucking optimistic, right? Like I feel really, but I go into every season optimistic, right? I've got too much shit going on for me to be depressed about my football teams, where I hope every year is going to be a good year. And then if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I got better shit to do in the offseason than to spend 6 months being upset over something. I feel really good about this football team. I feel really good that this team can win 12, 13, 14 games if things fall the right way. But minimum to me, this is an 11-win football team. 11-6 to me is the floor. I think 14-3 is probably the ceiling. And I think they get a top 3 seed. So I feel really good about this. And keeping Kirk Cousins, it just, to me, solidifies all that. And so, stop worrying about draft picks. Stop trying to get rid of the guy. There is no quarterback controversy. Kirk and Mike get along really well. There's just no issues here, other than the fact that your quarterback who took $100 million from you wants to be a starter. Well, you shouldn't have sucked ass last year, and you would be.
Yeah, exactly. And, we're talking about the most Falcons thing ever of Kirk coming in and MP9, knock on wood, hopefully he doesn't get injured, leading them to the playoffs or whatever. But wouldn't it be hilarious if the Falcons somehow get the first round pick back from the Rams if Stafford got injured? Now, I'm not wishing injury on anyone, but could you imagine? Because they'll be desperate at that point. They need to compete. That roster needs to win now. Then we're in the driver's seat, and it's not a negotiation of how much salary you're willing to take on. It's a negotiation of how much you're taking that salary and you're paying us some money. So that would be interesting to see us in the driver's seat in those negotiations.